Hello, my name is Casey Barnes, and in this short video, we're going to touch on death, dying, and the grief process, and how that's experienced differently around the world. Death is something that impacts every person around the world. However, it's experienced in many different ways, depending on culture and religion. For example, in South Pacific cultures, they believe that the life force leaves the body during sleep and illness, and therefore people die many times before they reach their final death. Orthodox Jews recite ritual prayers and cover all mirrors in their house when someone passes away. Men also slash their ties as a symbol of loss. Everyone must eventually face the reality that they will die one day. How people think about their death, however, usually changes with age and experience. Young people often feel invincible and don't really think about death, and therefore will engage in riskier behaviors. Middle-aged adults begin to confront their own mortality, and they change the way that they think about the time that they have lived and the time they have left until their death. Older adults are generally more accepting of death. The 5 stages of death include denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, and those aren't necessarily felt in that order. 4 dimensions of the tasks and issues that a dying person must face from their perspective include bodily needs, psychological security, interpersonal attachments, and spiritual energy and hope. People often face great anxiety and fear around their own death, and this is referred to as death anxiety. The terror management theory addresses the issue of why people engage in certain behaviors to achieve particular psychological states based on their deeply rooted concerns of mortality. Finally, some exercises that you can do to increase your own death awareness include things like writing your own obituary, planning out your funeral services, and asking questions like, what circumstances would help make my death acceptable? And is death something that could happen to me right now? Each person throughout their life will eventually deal with the loss of a loved one. Bereavement is the state or condition that's caused by loss through death. Grief is the sorrow, hurt, anger, and many other emotions and feelings that come after the death of a loved one. Mourning concerns the way that we express our grief. Most people believe that grief is an active process. One must acknowledge the reality of the loss, work through the emotional turmoil, adjust to the environment where the deceased is absent, and loosen ties to the deceased. Finally, we have what's called anticipatory grief, which is a period of grief experienced when death is anticipated, and supposedly serves as a buffer to lessen the impact of the loss when it comes. In this short video, we have seen that death impacts every single person around the world. Every person must eventually become aware of their own death. And grief and mourning differ greatly, depending on religious and cultural practices and beliefs.